What's up guys, my name is Mark, and today I want to compare a vintage 100mm macro lens I picked up for $100 to a modern 100mm macro lens that costs $600. Let's get into it. So the big question, what is macro photography? To put it simply, it's photographing small things, but given the unique way macro lenses are designed, those small things appear life-size in the frame. Which from a photographer's perspective can create some interesting compositions, and from an editing perspective can create some really dramatic cutaways. And there's nothing an editor loves more than good cutaways. Macro lenses focus to infinity and are really sharp, so they can also make great portrait lenses. So the two lenses I'll be comparing today are the vintage Pentax Takumar 100mm macro f4 and the modern Canon 100mm USM macro f2.8. Now my shooting subject today will be this. A 1920s era Kodak film camera. Fun little fact, these cameras were mass produced and helped bring photography to the masses because they were portable and for the time, easy to use. So the first lens I'm going to shoot with today is the Pentax Takumar f4. The lens is an M42 mount and dates back to the early 1970s. The build quality is fantastic with a metal body and a hard rubber focus ring that even after all these years is still in great shape. It's a fully manual lens with mounted aperture control and an f-stop range between f4 and f22. Two major differences between this lens and the Canon lens is that this lens doesn't have internal focusing, which means the physical length of the lens will vary depending on the focus point. The second major difference is that it reproduces a maximum magnification ratio of 1:2, or 50% life size. The Canon, on the other hand, can produce a maximum magnification ratio of 1:1, or 100% life size. It's an EF mount with fully functional autofocus and camera-mounted aperture control and an f-stop range between f2.8 and f32. Unlike the Pentax lens, the Canon has an internal focusing system, which means as we focus this lens, the length remains fixed. Looking at the Pentax through the f-stop ranges, you'll see how the sharpness increases as we stop up. The bokeh in the background gets reduced as more light comes through the lens. And here's the same performance with the Canon lens. The final test here is a side-by-side comparison between the vintage Pentax lens and the modern Canon. I'm shooting in a low light setup, so both lenses are set to an f4 at 1/50th shutter speed. This first shot is with the Pentax at minimum focus distance. Remember how I said this lens was a 1:2 ratio? Well, here's the Canon at minimum focus distance, producing a true 1:1 image magnification. These two shots appear fairly similar. The images are unedited, and it seems the color contrast on the Pentax is naturally a bit higher than the Canon. Now, neither of these lenses have image stabilization, but I don't ever shoot macro without a tripod, so I'm not really missing it that much. Now in my opinion, the image quality between these two lenses is actually pretty close. Of course, there are some shortcomings with the vintage Pentax lens, like not producing a true one-to-one image magnification, the f4 maximum aperture, and the fact that it doesn't have internal focusing leave it at a bit of a disadvantage. But the $500 price difference might make up for those shortcomings depending on your needs as a photographer. I'm actually personally happy to have both, but given these results, buying a vintage equivalent of a modern lens, in some cases depending on your needs, has a lot of value. And the best part is, if you don't love the lens, you could always sell it back to the open market for what you paid for it, or maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, depending on the buyer. Alright guys, well I'm going to end the video here. It's getting really cold and quite blustery out there. If you like that button, one more time. If you liked the video, hit that like button, and if you want to see more, consider subscribing. But I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and we will see you next time. Whoa! Well, that was fun. I didn't actually fall, I just pretended I did.